Hi, family. It gets harder and harder every time somebody asks me to introduce our speaker. A couple times I have told her story. And that's how I met her. You know, I go into how I met her, what I've seen her do, how I've seen her work through issues, and so when they eliminated that ability to tell her story, I don't know how to tell you. About this person who's my best friend, my companion, my lover, and my wife. I know that, wow, why am I getting emotional? It's her story. I think you'll appreciate and understand from your heart a little bit more of who she is and why this program is so important to her after you've heard her story. I can't do her story justice, but I would like to introduce to you Debbie G. from Bellevue, Michigan.
I just want to hug her kid.
Oh, they don't kiss in NA, that's right. I'm an addict. My name's Debbie. Hi, family. I have to hide the distractions. What's this look like? Hide that. If you can all just entertain me and just do one more moment of silence. I'd like to do that for the addict that's suffering. I'd like to do that for the addicts that have come before us and made this program something that's real. And I'd like to just, if you would please help me invite God into the room. Thanks. Like I said, I'm an addict. My name's Debbie. I'll probably shed this eventually, but right now I don't know. It's kind of in between seasons, so I'm kind of in between apparel. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to talk about tonight, so look out. I prayed not to have any secret agendas. For those of you who have never heard me share, I hope you brought your Kleenex because I brought mine. What I know about me today is that I'm a really emotional person, and I know that the stories that I share and the experiences that I've had have been real and have been of life, and I try to share them so that maybe you'll understand a little bit about me, and who knows, maybe you'll understand a little bit about you. So if you get uncomfortable with your feelings tonight, don't blame me. My sponsor always reminds me to share the speaker disclaimer, which states that I am not responsible for what you think you hear tonight. Only what I say. And if you're struggling with what that means, do you remember when they told you that you were powerless over addiction and that your life was unmanageable? I do. And you know what I heard? The drugs are the problem. And if I can just get rid of the drugs, everything will be okay. And then I remember when they told me no relationships for the first year. And I heard it, 1 year and 1 day, I will have healthy relationships. And they told me, go to meetings and don't use, and your life will change. And I heard, life's going to be a bowl of cherries and white picket fences. So my disclaimer is, I'll try to just be honest and open, and how you filter that, you may want to check out with someone else after the meeting. I guess it depends on where you're at. I use my sponsor for that, so. I shared a few weeks ago, I don't know, maybe it's been a couple months ago. It was the most bizarre talk I've ever done in my whole life. I had a using dream that night after I shared. That's funny, you guys, come on. I just hope that that doesn't happen tonight, neither to me or to you. So I changed and did some things a little different. I called my sponsor this time, and I almost always do that. But I had decided that time that it was going to be okay and that I wasn't going to be scared, and it was just a home group meeting, and they were all just addicts, and that's all we are, and it's going to be okay. And I got up there and I was scared to death. And I couldn't talk about how I was feeling. I couldn't talk about what was going on inside of me. And so I spent the whole evening telling that group of addicts how to recover. And what I know today, that's not Narcotics Anonymous. I am so grateful that when I walked in the doors of NA, no one told me how to do it. No one told me what I had to do. Shoot, they didn't tell me anything for a long time. I really enjoyed last night's speaker, how eloquently he talked about how he got here. For a long time, I never, ever, ever, ever shared about what went on for me before Narcotics Anonymous, because that's how they did it in the Eller Fellowship. And I didn't want, like what I had been taught was that the message isn't that we got clean, we found NA, and that it ended, that NA is the beginning, and that the message is hope and the promise is freedom. But I was recently reminded that there is a need for the addict to identify. And I don't have any wonderful, eloquent way to share it for you. Marcy and, who was it? Roger today. Marcy yesterday and Roger today shared my story. And so, thanks for letting me share. No, kidding. I was joking with Tom that I was going to just assign readings and send you all back to your rooms. And I'm not going to do that. But I am going to share with you something, just a few lines that will help you to understand where I was at when I came to Narcotics Anonymous. I don't have a glamorous drug story to tell you. This is like my version. And for those of you who are new, give yourself a break and just see if you can hear anything that you can identify with. For you old-timers, just love me until I can love myself. Our disease isolated us from people except when we were getting, using, and finding ways and means to get more. Hostile resentment, self-centered and self-seeking, we cut ourselves off from the outside world. Anything not completely familiar became alien and dangerous. Our world shrank, and isolation became our life. We used in order to survive. It was the only way of life that we knew. Even when others told us that we had a problem, we were convinced that we were right and that the world was wrong. We used this belief to justify our self-destructive behavior. We developed a point of view that enabled us to pursue our addiction without concern for our own well-being or the well-being of others. We became accustomed to the state of mind that is common to addicts. We forgot what it was like before we started using. We forgot about social graces. We acquired strange habits and mannerisms. We forgot how to work. We forgot how to play. We forgot how to express ourselves and how to show concern for others. And we forgot how to feel. And then in the end it says, but when from the state of drug success and well-being to complete spiritual, mental, and emotional bankruptcy. After years of searching, we were more unhappy and less satisfied than when it all began. That's my story. The first time I was ever given a basic text of Narcotics Anonymous was I was sitting in a treatment center, and they gave me this book. It was a big book, and I had been introduced to Narcotics Anonymous April 3rd, 1987, and I'd been to NA, and I'd used and went to meetings, and anyways, I guess what I wanted to share to you is that the day that I was given this book, the day that I asked for this book, and I don't know why I asked for it, because I was not a member of Narcotics Anonymous. I had never been given the opportunity to say I'm an addict, and I have this honest desire to not use. I mean, maybe it was like my need to be different in this treatment environment. It was like, no, you can't make me read that, I'm different. I'll ask for something different to read. They won't have it. They did. So they gave me this book, and I went out on a picnic table out on the side, and it was the country club. That's what everyone calls it. I went to a country club. And I sat down, and I opened the book, and I didn't read the instructions, like always. Like, I don't follow instructions, I don't follow directions. I try to put something together, and then the extra parts I go back and look up where they should have maybe went. But it talks about that this book's written about addiction, and if you found it, give yourself a break and read it. And what I did is I read the chapter that says who is an addict, and it told my story. And for probably the last 12 or 13 years of my life, I had walked around not understanding why I was the way I was, why I felt the way I felt, why I behaved the way I behaved. And all it took was 6 pages of a book written by addicts, and all of a sudden I knew. And from that day forward, I never ever wanted to be anywhere else but in Narcotics Anonymous. I didn't say I never wanted to use again. I said I never ever wanted to be anywhere else but Narcotics Anonymous. I never felt like I fit in at any of the other meetings, and there was lots of different kinds of meetings going on. There were cross-addicted, emotionally disturbed addicts. There were addicts addicted to crosses, is what we used to call them. And I was a rebel without a cause. I was a purist. I was an NA'er. You know, you talk my language or you can't come to my meetings. My meetings? When I got clean in Battle Creek, Michigan, I'd back up, I got clean in Grand Rapids. I stayed clean in Battle Creek. When I got clean in Battle Creek, there were 3 closed meetings of Narcotics Anonymous. There was an H&I meeting in the VA hospital, and there was a treatment center meeting. There were 2 treatment center meetings, one for adults and one for adolescents. They weren't H&I meetings because these were like closed meetings, and we let addicts who'd been using that day share because like we didn't know. So us 5 addicts would get together and go to all the meetings, and we took turns opening the meetings, and we took turns doing whatever we needed to do. And we listened to each other's story over and over and over again. We kept each other clean. Today in Battle Creek, I think there's a meeting every night. There's a couple times where there's 2 meetings a day. We have 2 noon meetings. We have a midnight meeting. It is possible to make 90 and 90 in Battle Creek, and it wasn't when I got here. And I'm real grateful for that. I found Narcotics Anonymous through a helpline call. I didn't make it, someone else did. And Narcotics Anonymous wasn't on the list, but this treatment center was, but they had a meeting list. And so I guess I share that with you, because if you're doing PI work, keep doing it. If you're doing H&I work, keep doing it. Addicts find this fellowship through H&I and PI, it works. That's how I got here. Nobody in my family knew about Narcotics Anonymous. Shit, they didn't even know I was using. I mean, you know, that's like denial is not a river in Egypt. The other thing I was thinking about recently was that, I don't know, this came to me this weekend, and so I'll share it, I don't know. There's been a lot of stuff going on in my head this weekend, and I'm sure most of it's been for me. That's why I say I came here with no secret agendas. You know, that maybe it's time that we begin to address the medical and the insurance issues and help them to understand that this is a disease that won't cure you in 14 days. But anyways. When I went to that first meeting, I was not really willing to be there. I was willing to stop hurting. I was willing to get people off my back. There was a man at that meeting who was chairing the meeting. He told me that I never had to use again against my will. That's the only thing I remember being told to me that night. I can't tell you what else happened. I remember walking in late. I remember they were doing readings, and I remember thinking, oh my God, I was supposed to have something prepared. I'm supposed to have to memorize something. You know, it was just this not in control, not okay, oh no, run, hide. And, you know, I often wonder today when I sit in, at least the meetings where I go, and we add some flavor to our readings, I often wonder if they mean the same thing to the newcomer that they meant to me when I heard them. I don't know. But anyways, that meeting that night, there was a man in that meeting that carried a message much stronger than anything that was probably said that night. It was a man that I used to buy dope from, and I hadn't seen him in a while, and I just figured it was because my husband had told him, you know, like, I'm going to turn you in if you sell my wife any more dope, because that's what my husband did. I would make a connection, and he would cut my connection, and I would make a connection, and he would cut my connection. It was kind of like putting a Band-Aid on that rash that you keep getting in the woods instead of not going in the woods, sort of thought process. You know what I mean? So anyways, I just figured it was one of those severed ties that my husband had so eloquently orchestrated. And this man, the last time I had seen him, we'd both been on a long run, and he didn't look real good. And that night when I saw him, he had color in his skin, he had weight on his body, he had a smile on his face, he talked in complete sentences. That was unusual for him. He stayed awake the whole hour. That was also unusual for him. And at the end of the meeting, I walked out and knew something had changed his life dramatically. Now that addict used, and I don't even know if he's alive today, his name's John L., but that addict saved my life. Now I don't know that I actually bought into NA at that point, but I know that they started sharing things with me that had, like, I started listening to the stories, and the last time, how do I want to say this? I took 2 showers today. I have cling underwear on, okay? Right now. Thank you. Now that's probably not a big deal, usually. You can't stay up here, sweetie. Go see your dad. But in July of 1987, that would have been a big deal for me. The last run that I had, I know it was 8 days. It may have been longer, but I know for sure that it had been 8 days since I'd eaten or showered or changed my clothes. And I went to work every day. And I often wonder why the people around me thought I was odd or different, you know. What happened to me from my first Narcotics Anonymous meeting and the last time that I had that run was that, and you know in the reading when it says in desperation we sought help from NA, desperation set in for me. That was the only thing that changed. From April 3rd to July 20 whatevereth, is that desperation came upon me. And when I had went to that first meeting in April, I didn't have a desire to stop using. And I don't know if it was because God hadn't intervened yet, or if because I wasn't ready, or if it because I hadn't hit my bottom or your bottom. I don't know why, you know, I don't know why. But I know that what changed for me the last time I used, the next meeting I went to, that was my chair. And I belonged here, and I don't care what you think about me. I will not leave this place. I cannot leave this place. I have no place else to go. So for those of you who are here and are feeling that, welcome home. You never have to use again against your will. The lie's dead, we do recover. I guess I'm not real sure what I'm supposed to talk about tonight. I've been to more workshops this weekend than than I thought I was going to be able to go to. And one of the things that I realize is going on and what I've been listening to is a lot of groups of people here are going through a whole lot of stuff. A lot of loss, a lot of really life-on-life term stuff. And I guess I just want to commend everyone for keeping your act together and like making this happen. I guess I'm speaking directly to the committee. And I want to not forget to thank the committee for making me feel so very welcome, and for making it possible for me to come back here. I don't know, there were enough people, I think, there must have been about 5 or 6 of you last night that raised your hand with less than a year cling. So my assumption would be that most of you, this is your first We Grow Together. It may even be your first convention. And as I was watching people stand up and getting key tags, we were doing the countdown, I was remembering the first convention I ever went to. It was a WISNAC convention. It was in Wisconsin. I don't know what city. Can't tell you. I drove. Story of my life. I don't know where I went, but I drove. These addicts said it'd be good for me, and shit, I didn't know. I said, okay, I'll do it. You know, they'd been telling me things would be good for me since I came into NA, and like, it had worked. So, you know, why not? And my vision of Narcotics Anonymous was like these 5 addicts in Battle Creek who told about how they used and how they were like happy and joyous now because we were like going to meetings. And then we would go to, on Saturday night, the Olive Street meeting, we'd go there at 8 and we'd get in our car and we'd drive to Kalamazoo to the Peacock Center to go to the candlelight meeting because that was the only way that you could get enough meetings in to get your you know, like a meeting a day sort of thing. And then we went to Sturgis one night a week, and so anyways, that was NA for me, Battle Creek, Sturgis, and like a couple meetings in Kalamazoo. I had been given direction by the group to get a sponsor. That's not true. I had been given direction by the group to ask Mary Ann to be your sponsor. You know, it says in chapter 5, what can we do, that the group is, if there's an implied sponsorship relationship there with newcomers, that we are each other's eyes and ears. And I don't know, at least in my area, I don't know that we do a real good job of that. You know, the analogy for me is watching 2 babies change each other's diapers and wonder why. It's pretty messy and it don't get done real good. You know, I'm real grateful that those addicts said, go ask Mary Ann to be your sponsor, and not say, go to meetings and listen and like what you hear and find a sponsor. You know what I liked was the sick stuff. The sicker you were sharing, the more I liked you. Will you be my sponsor? Please? I want what you have. I have what you have. We can share it. Oh. So Mary Ann, who lived in Kalamazoo at the time, became my sponsor. I spent a tremendous amount of time with her, and she was the one that offered the suggestion of this convention. And so being good addicts that we were, I don't know, there was 10, 11, 12, 13, there were about 14 of us. That's probably an exaggeration, but I want you to get a really good picture of how it looked. So let's pretend there were 14 of us. My mom and dad rented me a car because they're codependent and they didn't want me to drive mine. And it came with a string, of course, which we'll talk about later. And so I'm driving the rental car, because like I'm somebody now, I'm in recovery. And there's a little, like one of those little, I don't know what kind of a car it is, like those little Toyota trucks that almost seats 2. Have you ever been in one of those? You ever seen one and you go, wow, that looks really uncomfortable. There were 10 addicts in one of those little trucks. I swear to God. What they had done is they had set 2 in the front, and then they like, in the back where those little cab is, I mean not like a camper, but one of those little flat cab things, They had crawled in and their legs were like this, lined up in the bed of the truck, and they went to Wisconsin like that. Okay, that's how bad, that's how, I don't know, maybe that's how bad we wanted recovery, or that's how sick we were, or I don't know. So we tooled off to Wisconsin. There was a man there that night that shared, his name was Peter, he was from Baltimore. I've since had a chance to meet Peter again and talk to him. And Peter shared his story that night. It was probably about the 15th or 16th of October. Not important, Deb. And he shared how he felt. He shared about losing his sponsor, that his sponsor had died at about 5 years clean. And he cried. And he told a story, told a lot of stories, but he told some stories that were my story. And that night, it was a room much bigger than this, and I was standing way in the back of the room, up against the wall. You notice in meetings for me, I sit in the front today because I belong here, because I'm a member, because I'm an addict and I'm in recovery today. But in the beginning, I was in trouble and in the back of the room and not real sure if I belonged anywhere. So I was standing in the back of the room, kind of holding up the wall. I got a key tag that night that I didn't deserve. And I don't know, there's probably 400 or 500 people there. It doesn't matter. I could have been by myself, and I probably would have felt the same self-loathing that I felt. And Peter shared a story. And at the end, when it was all over, I knew that I was home. I knew that this was where I belong. It was like I went from being somebody who had a drug problem, who was going to these meetings occasionally, and doing what I was told to do, to being an active member of Narcotics Anonymous who believed that she had a disease that was going to kick her ass if she didn't do something about it. One of the stories that Peter shared that night, and I shared this last year, a few of you probably heard this, and I need to share it because it is like, it's me. Peter shared a story that night, and his version was about a computer and a Baltimore Loop highway. Mine's about a country road and a dog, but you'll get the gist. I share it's his story, and most of what I share is someone else's probably. I mean, like I've sat in meetings just like this and heard somebody share and go, wow, they're telling my story. Marcy told my feelings yesterday. I mean, you know, it was like, well, what could I add? Not a lot. But anyways, there was, I had a dog that I must have had 2.5, 3 years clean. Well, let me back up. Brakes, okay. The night that Peter shared this story, what he shared was that he had been in his car with his Spiritual Connection bumper on the back, doing 95 miles an hour on the Baltimore Loop. That was a pretty regular thing for him, being spiritually attuned. And that this one day, he found himself driving the speed limit on the Baltimore Loop, and he realized that strapped next to him in the seat was a computer with a seatbelt, and that he didn't have one on. And the night that he shared that, I went, oh wow, that's so sad. I'm so glad I'm not like that. And about 3 years later, after I'd been abstinent, I was driving to Grand Rapids to pick up a dog that we had taken up to a breeder to be bred. And it was after work, and I was in my car going very fast, as always, to get nowheres. It was like, don't be alone with Debbie for too long. Turn the radio up real loud, and then you won't have to think either. So I was doing my 95 Richard Petty down the road, you know, passing in, no passing, passing on curves, passing on the right, and it didn't matter, you know. It was like, I am on a mission. Oh, and she's really sad. And so I get this dog in the car, and I put this dog in the back seat, and I lay a blanket down, and I get her all cozy, and I pet her, and it's like, okay, and there's puppies now in there. I mean, I've got it all visualized. I can, like, see them. And I did like 45 miles, 45 miles an hour all the way home. And I kept pulling over to check to make sure that she hadn't like shifted in the back seat. And what Peter shared that night was that the reality for him was that there was something important in the car, and that when he was by himself in the car, there was nothing important. And for me, that day, it was the reality that with almost 3 years clean, there was nothing important in the car. And that was someplace that I never wanted to be in recovery. I got to tell you guys, I've been here since April of '87. I would not have stayed if my life had stayed like that. Yeah, you didn't promise me a bowl of cherries, but I'm sorry, I didn't come here to be sad and miserable either. I did not come here to beat myself up. I did not come here to let you beat me up. I didn't come here to be abused in service meetings, and I didn't come here to abuse you. I came here to find hope and freedom and to be relieved from the obsession that had me in the grips. I shared with you that I got that key tag that night, that I didn't deserve that, and I went from what had happened. I had went through this treatment thing. I don't know. It reminds me of like applying like a salve to your arm and putting something on. I'm going to have treatment. For a long time, I was real ashamed that I went through a treatment center. Back when we were going through the separating from other fellowship dilemma and trying to clarify our message in Narcotics Anonymous, and it wasn't cool if you didn't get clean off the street, if the NA meeting hadn't worked for you. So for a long time, I didn't share that. You know, I also used to share about using drugs in certain ways that I never did, because I thought that that's what I had to do for you to like me. Today, I'm real grateful that there are certain drugs that I never used in certain ways. I'm so very grateful. But anyways, the end of August, sometime, I don't know, of '87, I can't tell you what night it was, I picked up this guy that I had went through treatment with, and we went and bought some beer, and we cruised around Grand Rapids and told about, well, if you'd have known me back then, and yeah, well, if you'd have known me, and it was like, yeah, we'd have probably killed each other, basically. And I was so ashamed that I hadn't been strong enough. And I was so ashamed that I had taken another addict with me. And I never told anybody that that happened. I went on to meetings, did my thing, became a GSR. Oh God. Like I knew what I was doing. They told you how sick Battle Creek was. My sponsor was the secretary of Western Michigan area, and I became the co-secretary and then became the secretary. I don't know, I was like overly involved in Narcotics Anonymous. I had a key to a couple of meetings that I was opening, and somebody asked me once why I never carried my key tags, and I couldn't tell them that it was because they didn't mean anything to me. The following year, I was getting ready to go to a spiritual retreat, and there were going to be women in recovery. See, I was the only woman in Narcotics Anonymous in Battle Creek. Yes. You know why I stayed clean the first year? Because I was going to meetings to get men. I married that guy that looked across the table and said, you never have to use again against your will. Be careful when you chair meetings and tell newcomers that. They may marry you. Anyways, I was getting ready to go to this retreat, and I was going to meet women in recovery, and like they were going to have like multiples of years clean, and they'd been like working the steps and shit, and I'd just been like carrying my basic text to meetings occasionally. I kept it by my pillow at night. Osmosis. And I got real scared. It was like, man, these women are going to find out that I've been talking this line of baloney, and they're going to kick me out, and I'm not going to have any place to go. Well, in the gist of getting ready to do that, one thing I know about me and stress and like internally, like that gut stuff, when I get like really scared inside and I stuff it and I don't tell you about it, and instead I like go out and like clean somebody's house twice. I'm going to organize this weekend. I'm going to make files. You know, it's like, What I know about that is that it manifests itself in physical illness eventually for me. And so right before we went to that retreat, I got strep throat. And I was like, yes, I do not have to go. I am sick. Thank you, God. I remember thanking God for strep throat. That's the first prayer I think I ever remember. No, that's not true. That'd be a lie. I'm really going to try to be honest tonight. Although Paul's not here anymore. I could probably, no, never mind. Anyways, we were getting ready to go to this retreat, and somebody reminded me that like I could sleep up there just as easy as I could sleep at home, and that like was really like burnt me because they were right. And this addict sat across from the table from me, and you know I was getting a little bit honest. I was getting as honest as I could be, walking around lying about my clean time. And this addict says to me, well, like, how much clean time do you have? Now, remember, I'm a GSR, I'm an area secretary, I'm chairing a meeting, I'm opening a meeting, and I look at him squarely and look at him seriously and say, well, what do you mean? And he says, you know, the last time you used. And again, Miss GSR, area secretary, carrying this spiritual message of Narcotics Anonymous. I said, well, which drug? And he looked back at me and he said, the last one, Deb. I'm so very grateful that that addict asked me that question. I'd been coming to meetings since August of 1987 and no one had ever asked me what was the last time I used. And I don't know if I'd have been able to be honest or not, but I know today that I've never been able to lie to this one addict. And I don't know if it was because I got honest with him that night and he said, I love you, I understand, or if it has something to do with the divine happening of Narcotics Anonymous and that connection that I have with you as an addict. But I share that with you for two reasons. If you're an addict and you're sitting in this room and you're lying about how much clean time you got, it don't have to be like that. It doesn't have to feel like that. And it's really okay. If you want to be a part of, if you want to feel a part of something, you got to be a part of something. And for those of you who have the opportunity to meet new people in Narcotics Anonymous, it's really okay to ask them how much clean time they have. You never know when they need to get honest. I did. Sweetie. So I went to that retreat, and I was expecting like spiritual giantness. We were joking. Gary called and said, will you be like our spiritual speaker? And I'm like, well, what the hell does that mean? What's the difference between Saturday and Sunday? I mean, like, I don't know. Is that like some religious carryover or something? I'm not sure. But I remember what I used to think about spiritual giants, and I got to tell you, like, I'm not it. It's not happening up here tonight. I went to that retreat, and what I found was a whole lot of love. I was able to get up at the podium. Friday night's meeting was on honesty, and I got up at the podium, and I shared about not being honest about my clean time, and I shared my story, and they laughed just like you laughed. And I've been sharing that for years, and everybody laughs, and what I know about that today is that a lot of what goes on between my ears is real funny. Not all of it, but a lot of it is. The way I perceive reality sometimes is pretty weird, and that if I walk around with it inside and don't share it, I will become real weird, and I will think I'm real weird, and you will start being weird, and I will stop talking to you, and I will stop going to meetings, and you know the progression of the disease. I found a sponsor up there too, a new sponsor. The sponsor I had pretty much, I guess I've been given direction to ask her to sponsor me. First of all, because she had a year clean, and that was a phenomena in our area. And secondly, because she had been divorced and I was in the process of getting a divorce. When I got clean, I was married to an addict that was actively using, and he promised me that he wouldn't use. And I remember being devastated. He picked me up. It was on family picnic day at treatment. And he picked up a bunch of us addicts and put him in, we were all in his car. We were all, oh, I got 14 days. Oh, I got 17 days. You know, we were all like really bubbly because like we've slept 7 days now. We've also eaten 3 meals a day for 8 or 9 days, and we're like raring to go. Isn't recovery super wonderful? Wow, I have all this energy. That leaves at about 3 years, in case you were wondering. Anyways, we're in the car and we're all bubbly, and I look at him and I go, so how much clean time do you have? And he says, is this Saturday? He says, 2 days. And I was devastated. I was devastated because I had blamed myself for his disease the whole time I was with him. He used because I used. He used because I wasn't a good wife. He used because I wasn't there. He used because I was there. And you know what? None of that was happening, and he was using. And it was not okay. When I got out of treatment, I got out of treatment on like a Tuesday, and I used that Thursday or Friday. I can't really tell you what my clean date is. I picked the 27th of August because it was like close to the last calendar, whatever, when I finally got honest. We went back and looked at the calendar. But somewhere in that 7-day period, I had driven up to Grand Rapids to be with this women's group that they forced me to be in, that I told them I didn't need to be in because I couldn't relate to women anyways, so what would we have to talk about? God. Don't they know? I'm different. I don't need women in my life. Men will work just fine for me. Trust me. I got home one night and the house reeked of dope, and I realized that I had no safe place, and I ended up asking that addict to leave. And there have often been times, you know, I sat in the relationship workshop this morning and listened to a man share about how he felt like he'd done the best he could do in the relationship he'd been in. And, you know, I often wonder, I have a pattern of running cross country, like as far and as fast as I can. And I don't know, I've stopped trying to intellectualize whether I would have used or stayed clean, whether we'd been together or been apart. I know I'm clean today, and I know he's not, and we're not together, and life goes on. What I knew was that one of the suggestions that had been given to me was you needed a safe place. And that being around people that were using was detrimental to your recovery, and that was in direct conflict with learning how not to use. It says someplace in the basic text that recovery begins when the obsession is relieved, and that everything prior to that is abstinence. And I was thinking about how much I've been taught, or how much I was taught about the obsession and how to relieve that, and how that would be lifted, and how I was taught about how not to use. You know, I was told to go to meetings, I was told to get a sponsor, I was told to clean house, I was told to change my phone number, I was told to change my playmates, my playthings. I was told not to drive by the dope house to see whose car was there. You know, I was told to take a different way to work if that's what I needed to do. You know, on my belly button birthday, I spent it at the area service meeting. Now, that's really insane. I would never do that today, but back then it seemed like the best place for me to be. On the holidays, you know, I didn't go around family. I went to, like, out of town and spent the weekend out of town at meetings. You know, I lived in Flint for 3 years, my sponsor. Thanksgiving I was there, Christmas I was there, New Year's I was there, because family was like a drug for me. First drug I ever used was fantasy. It changed the way I felt, it changed the way I perceived reality, and it made me be okay. And I don't know about you, but that's what all the other stuff did to me. I think I felt so much, and I was so overwhelmed by it all, that one day I woke up and said, I don't want to feel anymore, so I'm going to be somebody different and see how they feel. I don't know. So family was like a drug for me, and, you know, I had a sponsor that told me, whatever you feel like calling your mom, call me first, and we'll decide together whether that's necessary. Looking back on that, there probably was a whole lot of unhealthy codependency going on in that sponsorship relationship. But you know what? I would not have stayed clean if I had been subjected to the emotional terror of my family. I believe that today. You know, I believe that God works through you and that everything that has happened to me for a reason. I am clean today because I took suggestions, and the suggestions that were given to me through some God that moves in a meeting, or that comes out of a book when I read a passage, or that comes from an addict that calls me because they're thinking about using and they want to go to a meeting, and I haven't been to a meeting in a week, and geez, yeah, what a concept, meeting, that might work. Okay, I'll take you. I'll fit you into my busy schedule. We went to a meeting today, and I was listening to people share about commitment, and I was thinking about how much I struggle to not commit. I do very little service work today. Now, you didn't hear me say that I don't do any service and that I don't love NA and that I'm a dinosaur and NA don't work for me no more and the meetings just aren't happening. What I said was the service work that I do is really, really important to me. And I'm really, really committed to it. But service work is not my program today. You went at the region? Do you know what they did at the World last month? No, how you feeling about that? No, what's that remind you of? Geez, I wonder, that Harvey boy, he just is so opinionated. Like, who's he remind you of? I encourage addicts to get involved in service because that's where I found my defects. They were in you, of course. No, I'm kidding. I got clean, I had 2 defects, and one of them was drugs, and that one went with the I'm an addict sort of scenario. At 4 years clean, I had a list so long that my sponsor said, I think we could group these together and kind of combine them so we could get them on one page. What do you think? When I do service work at committee level, I get in touch with old behaviors, old patterns, old feelings. You remind me of my dad, that's why I can't stand the way you look at me. Every time you say that to me, I feel like a little kid that's not worthy. That sort of stuff. That's what I get out of service. Yeah, it's about carrying the message. Yeah, it's about making sure that these meetings are here so that addicts who need to find a place can come and that we'll be here. But the part about taking Narcotics Anonymous and service work and making it happen for me and making me a responsible member of society is about changing who I am, changing the way I behave, changing the way I react. My husband told me at 4.5, 5 years clean, he said, you know what, you're like a different person in a service meeting. I was chairing our area. He says, you're this loving, caring, kind person at home, and you get in a meeting and you're like, saddle up the traditions, boys, we're riding tonight. And you know what? That really irked me, because I wanted to be this loving, caring person. I wanted you to like me. I'm not ashamed to say that today. First 3 years I was in recovery, I didn't tell you I wanted you to like me because I thought that was like sick and like, oh, I should be able to like myself. Love is an inside job. Yeah, that's right, but if I don't have human contact and if I don't have other people in my life, I'll be a pretty lonely, loving person, won't I? God gave me love to give. And if I don't have other people in my life, who am I going to give it to? The sofa? I don't know, So, I don't know where I'm going. Whatever. I was telling you about the second sponsor that I had in this codependency issue that her and I lived through. At some point in that relationship, I wrote a 4-step. First sponsor I had taught me how not to use. She taught me how to be abstinent. She taught me how to make phone calls in good times and in bad times. She taught me how to not listen to what goes on between your ears, because it's probably not real. Second sponsor I had taught me about powerlessness. She taught me about God. And she taught me how to have a relationship with another human being. And then I started writing this 4-step, and I shared it And I realized that I was sharing a Narcotics Anonymous 4-step with an addict who had never shared a Narcotics Anonymous 4-step with anybody in Narcotics Anonymous. And I walked away feeling real empty. And I walked away with not a lot of direction. And I walked away knowing that I wanted Narcotics Anonymous message, that I wanted recovery from the disease of addiction, and I wanted it in NA. I told you about that convention that I went to, and I listened to Peter share that night, and I think Marty shared that night, and then I went back the next year and I got to hear Greg share, and I got to hear Jim share, and met Greg again, and then I met Mr. Bill, and I got to listen to him share. And you know what bothered me, and I kept wondering? There are no women in recovery in Battle Creek. There are no women sharing at these conventions that I'm going to. Why is that? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you today. But at the time, what I believed was that it was because we didn't have the message of Narcotics Anonymous, that we didn't have Narcotics Anonymous steps, that we had this touchy-feely women group kind of thing, and we got really into talking about our feelings, but nobody taught us how to identify our defects and how to find out what our assets were and how to make amends and how to do inventories and how to pray and how to meditate and how to get involved in service and not have to be the secretary or the coffee maker, although those are both real important jobs and I've done them both. So I went out in search of a Narcotics Anonymous sponsor who had a Narcotics Anonymous sponsor who had a Narcotics Anonymous sponsor. And I was, riding my tradition Mountie, and I was interrupting you in meetings if you endorsed treatment centers, and I interrupted you in meetings if you were not an addict, and I interrupted you in meetings when you named your God and talked about where you worshiped him or her. And what I found out years later is that that wasn't okay either. That what I know today about the clarity of the message of Narcotics Anonymous is I get that from reading my basic text and talking, working with my sponsor. That's how I get it. And then what I do, what I give it away is I share openly and honestly in a meeting, and I tell you I'm an addict. I'm not an addict in recovery. I'm not a dope fiend. I'm not a gratefully recovering addict. I am an addict, and my name is Debbie. And if you don't get it, I pray that you'll get a sponsor and then you will get it. It's not my job to stifle addicts in meetings because they don't know how to share. What I know what was going on for me then is that I had become so passionately in love with the feelings and the changes that were happening in my life as a direct result of Narcotics Anonymous that I was terribly frightened that it was going to go away. And where would I go? Because they didn't let me share in those other meetings the way I needed to share. And they were all like 40 years older than me. They go, oh, isn't she cute? You remind me of my granddaughter. It's like, well, I hope your granddaughter ain't doing what I was doing, bud, or you wouldn't be like so happy and joyous about it. Couldn't swear in the meetings. How dare them tell me how to talk? Not like I was doing it. And that was like the hypocrite for me. The epitome of realizing, waking up at 5 years clean and realizing that I was this abrasive witch of Narcotics Anonymous service work was that I found myself sitting in an AA meeting one day, introducing myself as an addict and wondering why I got pissed when they came to NA and said, I'm an alcoholic and my name's Joe. And what my sponsor told me is, if you got to go to a meeting to get to a meeting, respect their traditions like you'd expect them to respect yours. And it ain't about making a point, and it ain't about being in denial. It's about having respect for others. That's why I don't swear in meetings anymore, except tonight I've sweared 4 times, and I cannot believe I've done that. That definitely wasn't God. Anyways. So I went out and I sought out the sponsor, and I actually had intended to ask a man to be my sponsor, and I got some direction from an individual who he was sponsoring, and I found that there was this woman that he was sponsoring, and she was from Flint originally, and she was living in Virginia, and She had like 11, 12 years clean at the time. Actively involved in service during the writing of the basic text. And just had a really wonderful message in Narcotics Anonymous, and that, you should check this person out. And so I remember calling her. I remember getting her number and then losing it and having to get her number again. And I remember like beating myself up for that. And I remember her asking me how much clean time I had, and I remember telling her, and then I remember quickly telling her, but I've written a 4-step. I mean, because I thought like somebody with multiples of years clean wouldn't want to sponsor a lowly little newcomer like me. What I found out is that like everybody has a message, and like God works through all of us. And a lot of what goes on for me today in recovery is because the women that I sponsor work the steps. A lot of times when I'm not. I got a woman that borrowed my 4-step guide, and I thought, you might as well, I haven't started using it yet. I was like, here you go, man. And I told her some baloney like, well, I've kind of started using it, so there may be some notes in it, but, like. And I realized like, oh my God, it's going to happen to me again, and I'm going to grow, and I'm going to change, and I'm going to learn from this addict that has entrusted me with her recovery by looking at me and saying, I want what you have to offer, and I'm willing to go to any lengths. Someone asked me if there was going to be a woman here that was here with me last year, and they said, you're the girl when you sponsor, and I said, I don't sponsor her anymore. And for me in sponsorship, I don't know how to sponsor somebody that isn't willing to actively participate in the steps of Narcotics Anonymous. It's the only thing I know. I mean, I know there are people out there that do that, and I think that they're probably happy. I mean, at least they tell me they are. But I don't know. It's not for me to say. But I don't know how to do it any other way. I can't give you anything else. And so the women that I have in my life today, the women that I sponsor, and there aren't very many, know that I have some requirements, and that's about actively being involved in the steps, and it's about actively being involved in service. And that doesn't mean compromising your relationship with your family or your job. I mean, service doesn't have to be this all enthralling, I'm going to do it all perfect yesterday sort of thing. A couple of the greatest service commitments, I mean, as far as like, I feel like I really got what I was supposed to get out of them. One of them was the first year I was clean. We started we were meeting, one night a week we were meeting in Paul's basement at his house. We were playing footsie under the table during the meetings. I was there for all the right reasons. Anyways, we were meeting in the basement of his house, and like, circumstances arose that it was probably not a good idea to meet in the basement of his house anymore. And so we went out, we got this direction that said, it's kind of a personality thing when you have meetings at people's houses, and you maybe should like go to try to find a public facility. And we went like, wow, that's a really cool idea. I think we'll try that. And so we opened this meeting, and it was at a car wash. It was this guy in the fellowship that owned a car wash. Now, it was across the street from a bar where I used to cop dope, but it was like a building, and like NA in Battle Creek, I think we had maybe like $3 in the little kitty, and so we opened this meeting in this car wash, and they made me like the keeper of the key of this meeting. So what that meant, this car wash had 2 watchdogs that kind of roamed the premises off hours. Have you ever had a dog in your house that just roams the premises? If you were going to have a meeting after 2 watchdogs had roamed your premises, you would probably have to sweep some things up, maybe. Some piles of things, maybe. Well, that was my job. And I thought they loved me. Wow, they think I'm somebody. Boy, tells you where I was at. Yeah, I didn't need to be in NA at all. So I had the key to this building, and I would open it up every night. It was a 9 o'clock candlelight meeting. I would get there at 8. I would shovel the piles. I would wash the floors down. I would set the tables up, turn the heaters on, light the candles, put the literature out and sit down and have a meeting. And you know what? I felt like somebody. I felt wanted, I felt responsible, I felt trusted. I don't know about you, but there's only been one time that I can ever remember going to a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous and the meeting not being there. I also remember how I felt about that, and I remember the call I made to their PI chair. Anyways, I was writing the traditions. Other than that one meeting, there's never been a Narcotics Anonymous meeting that's been on a meeting list that I've went to that hasn't been there. And for these addicts to look at me and say, you're real important, we trust that you'll be there every Friday night and that you'll open that door and that you'll set that meeting up so that the addict that needs that meeting will be there and that we'll be there, that was a big deal to me. One of the other really, really important service commitments that I had was somewhere between before that, but after I used and didn't tell anybody. They were having a convention committee meeting in Battle Creek, and it was Freedom 3. That's our regional convention, and they were kind of doing the convention circuit. They would move the meeting. We found out eventually that if you have a service meeting and you meet on a regular basis in the same building, you will get better attendance. Wow. We'll try that too. You know, we learned a lot in the last 10 years, haven't we? I think we have. You know, they should have wrote that stuff in here. Anyways. So this meeting was meeting in my hometown, and I did two really important things. I rushed to Jewel and bought muffins and heated them and served them warm that morning, blueberry muffins with butter, not margarine. And they let me make the coffee that whole day. I was somebody. I was needed. I was accepted. I was loved. I was counted on. I was somebody. That's why I suggest service work. Not for the grandiose titles. I mean, yeah, that's a part of recovery. I mean, if you think you can avoid it, keep coming back. But you can live through it without using. Knowledge is not power. Just because you think it don't make it so, you know. I remember listening to speakers share, and they'd have like these multiples of cling time, and they'd say these profound wonderments, and they'd talk about the struggle that they had and how they lived through it and how they really grew from it. And I'd go, that's not going to happen to me because I know now. You know, well, everything that's ever been shared has happened to me in some form or another, and I knew. I know every time I go to my mom and dad's house, my mom's going to throw the guilt hook and she's going to reel it in. And I drive down there going, I'm not going to take the bait. I'm not going to take the bait today because I'm in recovery. You know, and I get there and it's cool and we're having fun and she says something healthy and I go, wow, she's changed. And then she rolls out the old hook and I go, she's different. It'll be different this time. You know, it's like insanity is repeating the same behavior and expecting different results. I can't tell you how many times I've told myself, it'll be different this time. I'm different. This sponsor that I have today has taught me about Narcotics Anonymous, has taught me about the steps, has taught me how to take the steps and change who I am, and change into what I want to be. You know, I was telling you earlier that it matters to me that you like me. You know, I got dressed tonight and I was looking in the mirror and I just, my hair had to be perfect because, like, that's a woman thing. That's not an addict thing, okay? I mean, like, you have to have perfect hair. And I'm thinking, it's so windy out. Oh, my God, how should I wear my hair? And, you know, and then I struggle with this because I have these, like, conversations in the mirror. I've never seen anyone else but me, okay? But I have heard many voices. And so then I hear this voice, well, like, if you were, like, really okay with yourself, like, it wouldn't matter what you look like, you know, but it does. You know, and then I heard this voice that said, beauty is from the inside. And, you know, and then my daughter looked at me and said, Mom, you're really pretty tonight. And it was like, thank you, I needed that. You know, I get really hung up on sometimes about how, like, if I was really healthy, I could do this all for myself. Well, you know what? I used the last 10 years because I didn't know how to ask for help. Because I thought I was supposed to do this by myself. Because when my husband looked at me and said, if you loved me, you wouldn't use, and I did, and I would, and I didn't understand why. Somebody told me a month ago that you really need to learn how to ask for help, and you know what? He's right. I really do. So the sponsor I have is teaching me about how to do that, about how to reach out, about how to say I don't know, about how to reach out to newcomers, not because they're a newcomer and I'm there to save them, but because they're an addict and they may have something I need. I get real uncomfortable in a meeting when someone's new. I don't know about around here, but like in Battle Creek, most of our meetings have done away with the first step meeting thing. I'm so glad we did away with that. I mean, my first meeting, like, I didn't have a clue about powerlessness. I was like just trying to stay in the chair, you know. You know, and if they'd have like put the focus on me and said, this meeting's for you, and we're going to talk about first step, and like we're going to all look at you, and we're going to like just like talk about you for an hour, okay? But we love you. Keep coming back. God, I would have run and hide so fast. I don't know where I was going with that. Phew. So anyways, that must have been a secret agenda. Shoot, I hate when that happens. Okay, anyways, so I've got these steps, I've got this sponsor, and I'm trying to share this with the women that I sponsor. Another really profound thing that happened to me, I should move this coat, it's bugging me. And it's about honesty. I heard a lot about honesty this weekend, and first sponsor I had, we were celebrating a year clean for an addict. His name was Doug, and he was in Battle Creek. He's also not clean today. But anyways, at the time, he was one of the 5, and he was celebrating his first year clean. And that was a phenomena in Battle Creek. Newcomers came, and they didn't stay. And we didn't know then it was because all we were talking about was using, and they were probably like going out with like the urge or something. We found after much thought and direction that in meetings, if you share recovery from the disease of addiction, and that as a chairperson, your responsibility is to provide an atmosphere of recovery, that addicts will come back and possibly not use in between the time they were there and the time that they come back. That's not it. That's kind of in here. You kind of have to read between the lines to get that one. Anyways, this day we were going to have this birthday party and we were going to buy the cake, and I was being sent to buy the cake, the birthday cake, and I was somebody, I was important again, and I took this NA money and I ran to the store and I bought this cake and I paid for it, and it was like a $7 cake and she charged me like $4, and I go, thank you, God. I saved Narcotics Anonymous money. We're going to like save another addict with these IPs we're going to be able to buy. And I go home and I tell Paul and I say, you know what happened to me, and it was so spiritual. And he says, call your sponsor. And I said, what? And then I go, and this is serious, she'll want to know too. This is like a spiritual awakening. This is the 12-step spiritual awakening that I've been hearing about. Yes, I'm recovered. So I get on the phone, I go, Mary Ann, you're not going to believe what happened. I went to the store and they charged me less, and isn't it cool? And she said, Debbie, you have to go back and take that money back. I'm like, this chick's nuts, man. She's struggling in her relationship, and it's starting to affect my sponsorship stuff, you know. She pointed out to me that the way that I learned to have a relationship with myself is about being honest, and that the only way I can combat the nature of my disease that is in direct conflict with a relationship with me is that my honesty must be rigorous. So I go back to this store, and I walk up to the customer service counter, and I say, excuse me, I just bought a cake here, and I owed you $7, and you only charged me $4, and I'm here to pay the rest. You know, the woman looks at me like, yes, and they'll be checking you back in Sunday evening, won't they, dear? It's so nice that they let you out for the weekend. Are you enjoying the sunshine? And so I paid her, and I walked out, and I felt good about me. For the first time in my entire life, I felt good about me. I had done something that was in direct conflict with everything that was going on inside of me, and it felt good. And the lesson I learned was that honesty was okay. A few weeks ago, a man told me that he trusted me, and I thought that that was quite ironic, considering where I'd been in the last 10 years. And I've been thinking a lot about trust, and I've been thinking a lot about truth. I've just been thinking a lot, basically. That's supposed to be a joke, too. You know, and I don't know if I have any answers. I asked my 4-year-old. I seek out a lot of spiritual direction from my 4-year-old. What I know about childhood is that it's like they're born spiritually perfect. You were all born spiritually perfect. If you can believe that about yourself, recovery will be easier. Okay, now I didn't say recovery will be easy. I said recovery will be easier, because those moments in your life where you go, I'm not worthy, and I'm not enough, and I'm never going to get it, you can draw on the experience of knowing that I had it once. So anyways, I have this 4.5-year-old going on 17 or 18, I don't know. She drinks coffee in the morning, and she's talking about driving a car. But she's like my spiritual director, so to speak. So I asked her one day, I said, Allison, what does it mean to trust? And she looks at me and she says, well, Mom, it means you trust someone. And I go, well, that clears it all up for me, thanks. Thanks for sharing, Allison. And she said, well, you know, it's like when, you remember the other day when I was standing on the bed and I was going to fall backwards and you said, go ahead, trust me, I'll catch you, and I did it? I said, that's what I mean. The sponsor that I have today and the relationship that I have with her today is one that if I stood on the edge of my bed and fell backwards, I know she would catch me. I have this little plaque at home, and a sponsoree that I have gave it to me at Freedom something 6 or something. And I don't know the whole thing, and I thought about writing it down and sharing it with you, and then I was like, well, it ain't NA, that's a violation of traditions, and then I go through that all the time. Anyways, there's a line in it, and it's about faith, and it says is that faith is knowing. It's like when you come to the edge of everything that you know and there is complete darkness, faith is knowing one of two things, that when you step out, the ground will come up to meet you, or that you will be given wings to fly. I would like to stand here and tell you that I have this spiritually connected relationship with a power greater than myself that's loving and caring and that wants to help me in my recovery, and that it is the source with which I seek out on a regular basis, first and foremost. And I would like to tell you that my faith and my belief in that power is unquestioning. You know what unquestioning is? Unquestioning is that moment in your brain when you reach out and turn the switch on when you walk in your house to turn the light on, without thought. The knowingness that the action that I am taking will yield what I need. I would like to tell you, because that's what spiritual giants that do Sunday spiritual speakers do, I guess. I don't know. Can't do it. Can't tell you that. I can tell you that today I believe that, and I'm working on that a lot more than I was when I got here. We were reading from It Works How and Why. My home group is a Spiritual Solutions group at Narcotics Anonymous in Battle Creek, Michigan. We meet on Thursdays and Fridays at 5:30, and we do step study and literature study. And we were reading the 11th step from It Works How and Why. And it talks about prayer being like like a regular thing, like you do it all the time, kind of like eating. And you know, I would like to stand here and tell you that I think about prayer, and I look at my watch and go, geez, it's almost 9 and I haven't prayed since 6. I should do that soon. But you know, I am thinking, we ate at 5. It's almost 9. And I'm pretty pumped right now, so I'm sure I'll be up till about 11, and I think I could do pizza. Someday, I hope that I have this commitment with prayer and meditation. It's in such a way that if it's been since dinner and I haven't prayed, or that I haven't had this connection with a God, whatever that is, that I go, there's something unsettling. I think it's time to, I don't know. I won't keep you much longer, but I do want to share just a couple little things about my family today and my kids. They're a really big part of my life, and I shared with you about my 4-year-old and some of the lessons that she's taught me. I don't know if any of you have seen Peter Pan or not, but like there's this place, and it's called Never Never Land, and they can fly there. And they can fly there because they have happy thoughts. And my 4.5-year-old had a nightmare a few weeks ago, and it took her a while to tell me, and so it's been this kind of like, I don't want to go to bed, Mom, I don't want to go to bed, I don't want to have a bad dream. And we've been trying real hard to like nurture this spiritual perfection, this thing that God gave us to say, here, raise it. It's not yours, it's mine, but I'm entrusting you. And so we've been talking about praying to God and about finding happy thoughts. And we tried that the first night, and she woke up the next morning, and I said, so how did it go? And she goes, I didn't have any bad dreams, Mom. It really, really worked. And so the next night, she reminded me that it was time to pray and find our happy thoughts. I just had a thought that, do you ever remember when you were like less than a year cling, and like you used to have those using dreams? And it was usually because like you were like, for me, I was too hard on myself all day, and like I'd have a really good day and like screw up once at work, and that'd be what I'd think about all day long. When I put my head on the pillow, what's been spinning around here most of the day has a profound impact on what kind of floats through the night. Happy thoughts. That's what I was like, wow, an awakening. Anyways, the other night, my daughter was talking, we were getting ready to go to bed, and she said, tonight, Mom, I have 2 happy thoughts. And I said, oh, well, that's really good. Can you she goes, you don't know, she said it's a secret, or you want to share them, or whatever. And so she said, the first one is Andrea. That's her sister. And she said, and the other one is you. And you know what? When I was a little girl, my mom was never my happy thought. And to be an addict in recovery and be given the gift of motherhood, and to have a daughter look at you and say, you're my happy thought? Thank you, God. Recovery is happening in my life today. Most of you have seen my other daughter. Her name is Andrea, and she's 5 months old. My daughters have taught me a lot about recovery. Allison, my 4.5-year-old, has taught me how to be a kid. She's taught me how to love myself. Andrea's taught me a far more important lesson. There are no big deals. And what should have happened did happen. And God doesn't make mistakes. And I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And I'm not a bad person. And bad things don't happen to me because. And that if I can breathe, and if I can eat, those are really the only 2 needs that I have besides God. This has been wonderful for me. I would like to walk out thinking it's been wonderful for you. When the committee asked me to share, it had been a real hard struggle for me. I spent 13 weeks home with my daughter, pretty much consumed with her medical condition. wasn't able to make meetings during that time. I don't want to think about that. I was a mess. Gary calls and said, would you be the spiritual speaker? And I'm like, yeah, right. What are we going to talk about? Disease? This has just been wonderful for me. You know, it's affirmated for me that I am worthy, that I am enough, that I've got a damn good program, that I got a God in my life today, that I'm an addict and that I'm proud of that, and that I'm in recovery. You know, and some things that I'll share with you that have meant a lot to me. I don't know if anybody's told you this or not today, and so if they haven't, let me be the first. It's kind of late at night, but you're loved, you belong, you count, you're enough. You know, welcome home. Thanks.